It is Monday at 3. We are early today. Normally at 7 p.m. This is Why Libertarian. I'm a little early today because we have a diversity shoot that's happening later today. Pro 2A event that's happening at Recoil in Monroe Township in New Jersey. Should be pretty awesome. It's a way to get people from a bunch of diverse backgrounds into one place, and they all kind of, whether you're new or experienced with firearms and things like that, you get to one place and kind of compare notes and learn if you're brand new, or help younger folks that aren't as experienced in the 2A community. So it's going to be a fantastic event. So that's why I'm early today. But I did not want to mail it in. I wanted to give my full attention to this episode. So I feel like I have a pretty decent one, and it's something that is timely too. Before we get rolling, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, get this out there. We're going to be talking about something that really needs to be talked about pretty much consistently until it's freaking fixed, okay? And as you're going to see, the person that is kind of like juxtaposed to me on this issue, that I will be playing some bits from his recent episode, John Oliver, he doesn't think it's a big deal. He couldn't, whatever. It's not a big thing. We can deal with it. It is the national debt. It's the national debt. It's something that, for some reason or other, actually I know the reason, but it is a massive boondoggle, and Republicans, fiscal conservatives will pay lip service when there's a Democrat in the White House, or when the Democrats have a majority control of Senate, and especially a supermajority like they have now, or at least a simple majority in the Senate and the majority in the House. But the national debt, why have we not talked about this more? It continues to balloon. It continues to balloon. Obviously, the pandemic takes, the first kind of, seat in the priority pecking list of people being pissed off recently. But this is something that is ubiquitous with American society now, and it's a problem. This is a deep-rooted problem in our society, that we're just okay with this, that we kind of turn a blind eye. Now, the one thing we're going to do is we're also going to talk about propaganda and how John Oliver strings together some of these arguments using some very deceptive and devious as shit propaganda techniques in order to, get the people on the other side of the screen to buy into what he's saying, even though it's complete crap. I mean, some of it he's correct on, but you're going to see he's going to use some facts in a way that then leads to a completely fraudulent conclusion. All right. So keep an eye out for that stuff, and I will call your attention to it too as we go through it. So here's what we're going to do. One of the first propaganda, and this is a recent video that John Oliver put out. It just went live on YouTube maybe less than 12 hours ago. I guess maybe it was from his show over the weekend or whatnot. But so he does one of these every so often. Every couple of years or every year, he comes out with this national debt segment on his show, and the end result or his conclusion is always, it's not a big freaking deal. I mean, seems like a big number, but we really shouldn't care about it. And here's 5 or 6 complete bogus reasons why you shouldn't care about it. So this is now try and catch the propaganda and the psychological control technique that he uses in this first segment. This is how he starts off the top of his show. He takes a concept like the national debt, ties it to a 1 degree of separation, the debt clock that's in New York City, and then ties it to a family that has one individual that did some sinister shit, okay? So what he's trying to do, or what his handlers are trying to do, is get you to associate the national debt with crazy cuckoo family murderers, okay? It's complete bullshit, all right? Why they put it up there has nothing to do with whether one of them was a murderer or not, okay? But right from the jump, he's trying to get you to associate crazy murderer, national debt, all right? So immediately trying to de-emphasize it or make it seem like a conspiracy theory or something that crazy murderers are concerned with. Okay. On top of that, all right, the fact that he's picking at like the poem that she talks about and things like that is obviously trying to deflect. And some people will think, oh, he's that's just part of his comedy. He's trying to get yucks, like he's trying to get laughs and stuff. But no, it's devious. It is intended to undermine the seriousness of what he's about to talk about. And you'll see, he'll re-escalate it. But the key is not to get it to that high of a climax, right? Like, take it down first, start from negative territory, and then when you build it back up, it looks like a molehill, not a mountain, right? I'm going to look at my notes on this. It's like a faux pas of broadcasting, but I have like tons of notes on everything. There's an ad hominem attack. He's undermining, and he's basically using the phrase obsessing over it. Like, why would you obsessing over it? It's like this nothing thing, right? Now, what's interesting is he does correctly admonish Republicans in this, like after this clip ends, he admonishes them by saying that they are okay with talking or like emphatic about talking about the debt when there's Democrats in power, but like could care less about it when Republicans are there. And he's completely true. Like, that's completely true. All right. But the problem is it's a small little half truth to get you to the conclusion he wants to get you to. And the conclusion is not that debt is bad. Like, spoiler alert, it's not that debt is bad. Thank you, Diego. I appreciate it. I think this is an issue. Diego said, I'm glad you're pointing this out. This is an issue that needs to stop being forgotten. This needs to be front and freaking center. And if you'll notice, I will tie this into the Federal Reserve on the back end, because you can't have this conversation without having debt spending, which he does bring in, and also the Federal Reserve. And so you'll see that in later on in this. I would also hope that the two conclusions that you take away from this episode are, one, just how amazing the economic system was that we have had in this country to develop so much wealth and so many assets, okay, and be so productive. And then the second conclusion that you need to draw, which is an even bigger appreciation for something that you might also think, is that the theft that is going on now isn't just like big, it is mind-numbingly big. Okay, that's what I want you to take away from it. Amazing economic system that allowed people to build wealth, and then the theft that is happening over the last 50 to 100 years is unfathomable. Like, you can't even, and nothing has ever happened like it in the history of mankind. All right, so let's go to the second clip here. The first thing is the take home from that segment, and the path he's leading you down is progressives make great spending decisions. They're investments in our future. You can take out a loan and get a factory, and then you have a factory, right? Like, you have something to show for it. We don't talk about the fact that you can end up with too many fucking factories. We just talk about there's something at the end, right? It's not just printing money to give to people, which is ironic because they also do that too, okay? But so that's the overall argument. The overall argument is progressives make the good decisions. You'll see he then follows that up with, well, fiscal conservatives make bad decisions because when they're in power, they do bad things, which, by the way, again, half truth, he's not far off on. But the conclusion he's going to draw at the end of that is going to be completely batshit crazy, okay? But now, that being said, so what else did he also put in there? Well, here, I got to take Republicans and Democrats to task on this because this gets abused all the time. The trope that, oh, most of the debt is owned by Americans. It's pension funds and it's these, annuities and it's insurance companies and things like that that own the debt. And he's diffusing the situation. He's trying to say, see, it's not that bad of a problem because, we can always choose to restructure our debt and it's not a problem. It's actually worse. And Republicans feed into this bullshit narrative that, oh, well, we're being financed by China and Japan. And the answer is yes. The problem is what they're not paying attention to, or what they're intentionally omitting, is that if we have a problem paying back our debt, it's better if the other countries own the debt. Because then when we go boom, they go boom with us. If most of us own the debt and we go boom, they can actually be all right, and we're screwed. Okay? Now that's a very important point that then gets carried in later into this episode and into this talk. So remember that we are so leveraged to ourselves, you would think, "Oh, that's okay because then we can all collectively decide to like cancel the debt or something." No, that can't happen. When you have pension payments that are dependent upon debt that's taken out nationally, and all of a sudden we have a problem paying it back, you just can't go, "Oh, well, I'll just give up my pension payments." Are you going to do that? We'll just give up Social Security payments, right? Like, that's the thing that the Republicans always rail against, all right? This guy's trying to say, "Oh, well, we all own the debt, so it's not a problem." What else is he talking about? We need to get things for what we're spending, right? Well, what happens if we spend it on bullshit, right? We just have a pile of crap, okay? Money is technically a store. It's not necessarily a store of value if it's not a physical thing. Fiat currency, and the line that most people would say is it's basically a judge of productivity. So if you have a certain amount of money, if your country gets more productive, that money's worth more. If you have the same amount of productivity and you print a bunch of money, that money's worth less, okay? But for him, he's talking about, we can buy physical assets with it, and then we turned it into something. That's crap. If there's nothing to go through the factories, if there's no demand, it doesn't matter how many factories you have sitting closed. That is a socialist, mind-numbingly bad example, okay? What else do we have? It's mostly from the programs we committed to a while ago. How does that make it good? How does that make it okay? He talks about Medicare and Medicaid. Also in there is the military-industrial complex bombing people in other countries. How's this a good thing, right? Like, we committed to those problems a long time ago. It's always been that way. Well, so that's good. That's okay. It's a non-issue because we made bad spending decisions in the past. And then he follows through with an erroneous analogy after the clip about, companies and how they can run deficits for a long period of time. He says Amazon and Tesla, they ran deficits for years, okay? You know what the difference is? If they went fucking bankrupt, it doesn't affect anyone's pensions, right? Or it only affects the pensions of the people that are in that entity. If the United States government goes bankrupt, everyone in the country is screwed, right? Unless you detach from the system and you're an agorist. All right, but he's not talking about that. He wants to draw a BS comparison between a for-profit company and a country that he says, it's okay, we can just run deficits. It's all right. Eventually, we'll make money, right? Not to mention the fact that this is also a misconception. The more money that you run up in debt or you print is basically borrowing demand from the future. The piper has to get paid. You can't put it off indefinitely. Now, something he will actually look at as well in the future is, all right, well, say things get bad. I'll give you a fix, okay? But that being said, again, the fix is completely ignorant, all right? Now, we take a side track here for a second, and we're going to talk about basically deficits, because that's how we get to a large debt is every single year we spend more money than we have. We didn't spend enough! We should have cut a bigger check. I have a hard time believing that millions of people watch this guy and actually think, like, they need to look at this the way that Stephen Colbert used to do conservative comedy or satire, okay? Stephen Colbert was, conservative, right? The Colbert Report, but you knew he was making fun of conservatives. People need to flip the way that they think about watching this guy. They should not think about him as funny and also informative about progressive issues. They need to start thinking about him as complete freaking satire. We didn't spend enough money after the end of 07 and 08. We didn't leverage up enough as a country. We needed to leverage up more and borrow more money, okay? Completely asinine thinking. Why? Because you can't just pile debt on top of debt to create, again, you're borrowing demand from the future. You're also borrowing productivity from the future because demand today sows the seeds for building infrastructure for demand in the future. But that being said, he doesn't think we borrowed enough money. Now, he's not off base. Again, half-truths. He's correct. The Republican presidents, as well as a couple of the Democrat presidents, had deficits that were run. If you notice, there's like a little, I don't even know what to call it. Like, psychologically, it just kind of shows up in his hand motions, right? The one side is revenue, the one side is debt, and the other side is spending. If you notice, when he does his like little kind of like back and forth, right? Like, the spending part comes down slightly, and then the tax hand goes up really fucking high, doesn't it? Doesn't it? It's like it is his brain showing what he truly feels, okay? That's the end thing he's getting to, right? This whole the whole piece is 22 minutes. The point he wants to drive home at the end is the debt's not a problem, progressives buy the right things. So give us the checkbook, or give us the ability to sign the loan, okay? Because we buy the right things. And oh, by the way, the answer at the end of the day is just increase taxes. That's it. That's all that matters. Like, as long as you give us the ability to spend indiscriminately, all we can do is just raise taxes at the end of the day, and miraculously it fixes this. Stepping back a second, yes, Bryce, add in tax waivers for the big companies that were running deficits. That's correct. And here's the other thing, they hide them. So like Amazon, most of their like tax credits and grants and stuff like that are done at the state level. They're not done at the federal level. You can't tell me that there's not some back and forth going on in terms of horse trading for money that goes back and forth between the feds and the states that are giving tax breaks to companies like Amazon. All right, so what else do we have? The narrative seems to keep coming back to tax cuts are bad and we just need the right types of spending. So how does he follow that up? He follows it up with a correct, again, there's moments of clarity, a correct critical analysis of Trump and his fiscal policy, which is a freaking train wreck, and then reinforces just the most awful example of a fiscal conservative on the Republican side of the House, Ted Cruz, in this next clip. It is again, it's mind-numbingly bad on both sides. Someone tell Tijuana Ted that you do not get to say "I told you so" if you bit your lip while the shit was happening. You don't get to say "I told you." It's the same thing as Dave Smith pushing the Libertarian Party to say something before the vaccine passports are in place, right? You have to speak up before the problem is there. Or you can't even wait until like after the problem's been there for a while. You have to be out in front saying this is a bad idea. And the dude isn't. If I remember correctly, he was part of Tea Party 2 or 1.0. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But he was part of Tea Party 1.0. They should still be holding out. I can't say this enough. The federal government should still be closed. But they didn't have enough principle to be able to back things up. It was a publicity stunt. That's all it was. And they caved to pressure because all they cared about was their political futures and not whether or not they were actually principled and sticking to the principles. Wasigi from Uganda, my friend in Uganda. Yes, alternative to taxes. I think alternative to taxes is one thing, and then also let's just get rid of them. Let's find a way to shut down DC and not have to pay any, or at least be self-sustaining in the handful of programs that stick around. So what else is included in that clip? He correctly is critical of Trump's fiscal policy. Trump's fiscal policy was a freaking train wreck. He was worse than any Democrat ever up to Biden, and now Biden will outdo him. Ted Cruz is a Beltway Republican who, again, he's more invested in his political future than he is actual principle. All right? That entire segment is kind of true. But again, this is why fiscal, supposedly, air quotes again, fiscally conservative Republicans suck worse than even Democrats, because Democrats are truthful. Like, they will tell you, we're going to spend a fuck ton of money. Republicans will say, oh, no, we're going to end the debt. We're going to stop it and remove the fiscal deficits, and we're going to get rid of it, and we're going to pass the Mac Penny plan, and we're going to fix the problem. And then when they have the majority, what do? They run the debt up just as much, if not more. It's absolutely ridiculous. Next clip. What is he talking about? Low interest rates. This is another trope of the left. It's like, whoa, low interest rates are low. It's a miracle. That means that we can continue to borrow. I think my libertarian friends and my ANCAP friends that are watching this right now, I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going to go with this one. They have no explanation. In the comments, what do you think the explanation is? Why are interest rates so oddly low for the last 30 years and have been decreasing over time? How could that be? Financially, things are just amazing, aren't they? Like, interest rates just magically stay low so we can continue to borrow and not have to worry about the carrying cost. What could the answer be? In the comments, what do you think the answer is? The miracle of low interest rates. They just appear out of nowhere like pixie dust, right? How could that possibly be over the last 30 years? Before I give you my answer, which I'm pretty sure you know, they know. They know what the answer is. They just won't tell you. You know why? Because the answer is the Federal Reserve and the central banks. That's what the answer is. But they don't want to tell you that. That rate curve that he shows you that's downward over the last 30 years, that's the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates absurdly low for 30 years so that it can continue to finance debt on top of debt on top of debt. Blue Star telling me I got taken down on YouTube. Apparently they don't like that I'm being critical of John Oliver. Whatever. Fuck them. I don't care. I'm on Odyssey. Go to Linktree, linktr.ee/ylibertarian. Watch me on Odyssey. All right? If I got taken down, it's because I'm saying something that they know is truthful. They know the answer. The head of the IMF knows the answer. It's the Federal Reserve. Always has been, always will be until that thing is canceled and taken out of commission. The Federal Reserve keeps interest rates low, which allows them to continue to borrow ad infinitum with absolutely reckless abandon. Okay? And that's the only reason. And it's why the stock market is artificially inflated. It's the reason why asset values across the entire country. It's why now he's going to talk about, all right, well, what happens if we have a problem in a second? And again, he's going to completely downplay it. Okay? And it's going to be crafted by his political narrative, not actual economic reasons. All right? But so you have to pay attention to what he's saying. He's basically saying, oh, we don't know. It's a miracle. I had no idea why interest rates stayed low for the last 30 years. Part of something that I was talking about with my grandmother yesterday at Easter was she said, why is it that CD rates back in the 80s and the 90s, I used to be able to get 9, 10, 11, 12% on CD rates. You know why? Is because the Federal Reserve used to have a sane interest rate policy. But even back then, they kept the interest rates artificially depressed compared to where they could be. Because they wanted to fuel a country that was built on debt. Now, who does that punish? It punishes savers, like my grandmother. It punishes savers like everyone else that has built up value and assets and wealth in this amazing economic setup in the United States. It punishes them because it doesn't allow them to invest their dollars in anything other than high-risk assets, which means bubbles get bigger and fallout gets bigger. It means that a butterfly flaps its wings and the entire economy falls down. But they won't tell you that. They know it, but they won't tell you that. It's a miracle. We have no idea why it's happening. All right, he's going to bring this all home. Oh, look, we're back on. Maybe I said something that was actually true, and maybe they're not allowing to censor me. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'm not back up anymore. As long as I'm on YouTube, throw me a sub if you're not subbed. Here is the last clip from this dumpster fire. Remember, his take-home is progressives spend debt money good. Republicans just give it to their friends. And you know what? He's kind of right on the Republicans. And you know what? He is dead ass wrong on the Democrats and the progressives, okay? But that's what he's driving at. He also goes on to say in this entire video that if problems occur, if something happens, we can just, again, remember that psychological thing where that tax hand came up a lot further than the spending hand went down? He always said, oh, well, we can just raise taxes on the people that can afford to pay more. It's like these people never played Jenga, right? Like, have you played Jenga before, all right? Or anything that has to do with stacking stuff that gets progressively more precarious. That's exactly the situation that we have. And it's exactly the game that these thieves are playing. They keep stacking the tower progressively higher and higher and higher with weaker and weaker foundation. And then what happens is what? The wind blows and the entire tower falls over, which is exactly the scenario that happens when you take out too much damn debt. You can't just tax your way out. And the whole narrative about, oh, well, you know, it's held by U.S. people. So, like, you know, the pension funds hold it. So it's not a problem. We can always just, like, restructure it or something. Well, no, you can't, because you got people that are dependent upon the flow of income and cash flow that comes from that debt that's supposed to be low risk. This sounds like 2007, 2008 all over again. Investment banks that were like, oh, we're leveraged 200 to 1, make it 300 to 1. If anyone's ever watched, if you've ever watched The Big Short, it's one of my favorite movies as of late. Like, I get hooked on a movie and I'll watch it over and over and over again till I basically memorize all the lines. The Big Short is that movie as of late that I've watched for like the last 12, 15 months during pandemic. And part of it is Richard Thaler, okay, the economist, behavioral economist, explaining the hot hand fallacy. The idea being that, like in a basketball game, they keep feeding the star player because he keeps hitting shots. Well, it's not necessarily that star player isn't good or the star player is good and that's why they're hitting shots. The problem comes when, say, you want to put $20 down on whether or not the player hits the next shot. The likelihood of that player hitting the next shot isn't any better during that course of good luck. It's not. And it's also not true that it's going to indefinitely keep going. So, like, if they've hit 5 in a row, it's not true that it'll be 10 in a row and 15 in a row and 1,000 in a row. It's not true. Eventually they'll miss. And eventually they'll not just miss once, but they'll go through a dry patch. It just happens. It's the law of large numbers. But the problem is when you just bank on the idea that things will continue to be good and positive ad infinitum. So what are we risking? We're risking a small disruption causing a gigantic cataclysmic collapse. That's what we're risking. I don't want to be Chicken Little. I don't want to say that the sky is falling. But the truth is that the sky could be fucking falling. When you are $28 trillion in debt, and most of that debt is owned by the people in this country, if confidence is eroded in U.S. currency, the lights go out. Like, it doesn't end up being a recession. It doesn't end up being a depression. It ends up being the end. It ends up being China is now the driving economic force of the world. All of these Republicans and all these conservatives that were deathly afraid of socialism and things like that, okay, they're feeding into the beast by not being fiscally conservative when they have the ability to be. They'll sit there and rail against socialism and communism. Well, guess what? You're setting the playing table up for them to win because you're not dealing in principle. You're dealing in talking points. And you talk and you lie. Democrats lie through their teeth, but when you see the truth of it, they stick to it. They do it. Republicans are like more upfront about their lies. It's almost comical at this point in time. But they're going to let socialist and communist economies take over in setting us up for this awful fall that's coming. China will take over. They will. If we allow this to continue to go on and we do not hitch up our belt and actually fix the problem at hand. Here's the other dynamic. This is just another form of socialism. I know this is going to anger like some of the boomers that might watch this, but it's just another form of socialism. Because as opposed to the overt form of socialism, where like in Venezuela and Cuba, they take over the companies, in the name of the workers. Here, they don't take over the companies, at least not overtly, like not on the face of it. But what they do is they make everyone indentured servants. Okay? And so as opposed to having like some kind of equity stake in a company, you have a debt number that's tattooed on your forehead. It's socialism, just of a different color. All right? Here's the other angle. It's also the biggest theft in history. Because what they're doing right now by keeping interest rates artificially low, by spending way more that they take in, and by printing dollars, is they are eroding the net wealth of the American people. Because they're replacing hard assets with paper, like rubber checks. They're replacing dollars and gold and other types of currency with these debt notes that bleed red ink. That's what they're doing. And so it is effectively the largest theft in the history of mankind, because they're doing it over a long period of time, and they're also doing it in multiple ways. If they all did it in one way, if it was all taxes, you'd be able to tell and you could stop it. If it was all inflation, milk would be $100 a gallon, you'd be able to tell and you'd be able to stop it. The balancing act that they play is that they're stealing from you in more than one way. They're stealing from you in 3 ways. And every single one of those ways that they steal from you, they erode the net wealth that you have built up. And so if you're invested in these American investment vehicles, dollars, American companies, US treasuries, all of these things, even corporate debt, all of these things are essentially just a way for them to fritter away your purchasing power and some of your dollars out of your accounts, and to replace it with debt, with IOUs. And it's not just like at the level of the government. It's at the level of government, it's at the level of big business, it's at the level of even local pension plans and things like that for municipal governments. They're filled with IOUs. There are assets, but the problem is that the assets have been leveraged up so much. And if you noticed in that one clip, he comes back to it and he goes, oh, well, for a moment, our debt exceeded the gross domestic product. And it doesn't look like Greece around here. People aren't rioting and stuff. Well, I don't know. Did he watch the fucking Black Lives Matter shit that was going on? A lot of that had to do with more than just cop brutality. A lot of it had to do with the economic situation and people being pent up in their houses. But it's not like, it's not like Greece. Like we haven't had like, wide scale revolt. Well, because it happened for a nanosecond. That's like saying if you dunk your head underwater and you don't hold your breath, but then you pop right back up again. Oh, I didn't die. I didn't drown. See, I went underwater and I didn't have any breath. I didn't die. So now I'm going to go down there indefinitely. See how stupid that is? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Oh, like we flaunted death, but we didn't die, so we should just commit to it. It's like, that's like Evel Knievel. Like he made one jump, right? And then being like, oh, well, he's going to make every single jump after that. He'll never die. He survived the one, so he's going to survive every other one. It's the most ridiculous logic I've ever heard in my entire life. And the problem is if you don't take a second to weed through that kind of like artful crafting that they put together. And if anyone has seen it, go look at the article about the psychology of basically how this art form that he has put together has, or the people that work his mouth for him put together, okay? It is basically propaganda that is meant to hypnotize you and to implant information into your head that you take at face value when it is complete smoke-filled coffeehouse crap. It's illogical, but it's crafted in such a way that it seems compelling. It seems intelligent. Michael Malice would say that the midwits eat this up. They think it's super intelligent. Here's the last thing I'm going to leave you with. I tweeted something out earlier today, and I could not believe... I believe this at my core. There's a ton of people right now who are assisting in this theft. They are assisting in this basically mass enslavement, debt enslavement of the entire country and this totalitarian rule that we currently live under, but we all have the illusion that we're free. The people that are helping are the entertainers. They are the John Olivers. They are the group of, celebrities like J-Lo and the other ones that put out a video that basically talk about getting your business certified for, COVID hygiene, which is basically just a cash grab. Okay? These people, these talking heads, these debutantes, these celebrities, the Hollywood elite, they are the perfect useful idiots because they're attractive or they're witty and pithy and they have a good message or a good delivery of the message. And so the powers that be use them, right? The bankers and the folks that are behind the scenes that are effectively the thieves, they use them as the face of what's going on to sell the people on the propaganda so that they think that things are all rosy and good and they're going to go well. Things are going to continue to be great. We can just borrow whatever we want. But they're the most effective, useful idiots on the face of the planet because after they're done delivering the message and after it all goes boom, they're the first ones that get thrown out in the street to the mob. I hope they're thinking about that. I hope they understand that. They live in the lap of luxury because they're the first fall guy. They will be the first ones to go down. The second ones will be the politicians. But the politicians will be the ones pushing the debutantes and the celebrities off the boat first. And so when you see John Oliver give a talk like this, it seems compelling. It seems smart. I don't believe for a second that he's the one putting this together. He has a team of people that have been indoctrinated throughout their entire lives that are putting this together. And maybe they believe it. Right? Like, I'm not putting it past him that he actually believes this crap. But he's not the one who's doing the head work behind the scenes. He's the one who's reading the cue cards, the teleprompter, right? It's the same thing with anything else. It's the same thing with the pandemic and the stay home and look, I'm living my best life in house arrest, basically, right? In my Beverly Hills mansion. You should too. It's all right. We'll get through this. They are the most effective, useful idiots on the face of the planet ever to live. And the theft that's going on now is unconscionable because it has taken the most amazing economy that has ever existed in the history of the world, and it is gradually undermining the value that it built over 250 years. And that's accelerating. It's not just small little bits anymore. The theft is accelerating. It is a Ponzi scheme. And one of the examples of the Ponzi scheme, or one of the most ubiquitous characteristics, is it starts small. It starts with a single transaction or a single investment, and then it begins to snowball. But the snowball isn't big and noticeable at first. It takes time. This has taken time. It has effectively taken 250 years. Well, 200 and some years, depending on when you mark the beginning of the Federal Reserve. But these shadow authorities that are essentially robbing us blind over time, they're hitting the gas. It's happening faster and faster. So how do you protect yourself? Hold assets that are not US dollars and not US debt. If you have a pension, I would not expect it. Like if it's a government pension, I wouldn't expect it to last the rest of your life. If you're 50 or 60, I would not expect that thing to be around when you're 70 or 80. I just wouldn't. You need to make plans for being able to be self-sustaining, or at the very least have assets that you can trade for things that you're going to need to sustain yourself. Because the debt bomb that these people are building, like 07, 08, you ain't seen nothing yet. That debt bomb was, $4, $5, $6, $7 trillion, right? It cost us a couple $1 trillion in borrowing to right the ship. This one, there won't be enough money. Like the amount of money that they will have to borrow or print will make this Zimbabwe. It will. Like, this seems like a canary in the coal mine kind of situation. Ted Cruz, if you have any chance, if anyone knows Ted Cruz, please tag him or send this to him. Ted, you don't get to say I told you so if you're mute while the shit is being put in place. If you are truly the person that is going to take the lead on this and call bullshit on it, you need to be the person who's out in front while it's happening. You can't Monday morning quarterback this. The Tea Party should still be holding out. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, regular time, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Again, reminder, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, retweet, get this thing out there. Hopefully you like this episode. And tomorrow is Decentralization Day. We are talking about finally getting up and running on the Hive blockchain to start decentralizing your social media. I will see you tomorrow at 7 Eastern. There are so many reasons to decentralize, whether it's lack of control over your own data, platforms where you are the product and get paid little to no money, or censorship and government oversight into your personal communications. That's why I'm taking a journey to decentralize my social media as well as my life. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and check out the Decentralize Everything playlist on this channel. Whether you're curious or looking to decentralize too, I would love your company as I make a move to break free, take control, and decentralize everything.